I think good listening is going to be one of the greatest remedies to isolation, because isolation in almost every way ends up being muting.
Sure.
You're just not going to tell.
Takes away your voice.
You're not going to say,
Mm-hmm.
and you may be even talking, but you're not going to say anything of substance or of hurt or how you're really feeling or how you're really thinking, because
you're not going to say anything that might be risky to say.
Because you'll be judged. With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome back, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast, talking about isolation.
Yeah.
So that we could be part of some kingdom plan and strategy to end isolation.
Yep.
And in this part one, we're just trying to get our arms around it and make sure that we honor it and bring to the light that this is real and it exists. We've experienced it.
No doubt.
And we talked about, I just want to go through some list of some things that I had here, and then we can tell some stories.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that isolation has a relationship with boredom in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've said this for years, a bored man is not a man who doesn't have anything to do. He just doesn't want to do it.
Right.
It's not like I ever don't have a chore list
or always something
or some work to do or some that I need to engage in. But it's that when that sense of I don't want to do it,
mm-hmm.
And I want to retreat.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pull away. Isolation, feels like, boredom at times.
Yeah, and the affirmation, like, well, I'm alone, I'm isolated. Not that you would necessarily internally think of it this way, but I think there is sort of a thought process of I'm alone, I don't have any friends, I'd like to do these things, but get up off my, off the couch or wherever I am, where I'm isolated. I have these things I know I need to do, but I don't know anybody I can do them with, and so I'm just not going to do them. And it's sort of this, no matter the angle you come at it or the, which part of the prism you look at isolation, it all is this cyclical downward spiral.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the commonality of the causality may be different.
Right.
But the commonality of this downward, it just leads you down. I found this quote from Henry Cloud. There's a difference between solitude and isolation, which we've said a bunch of times and plenty of other people have too. One is, I hadn't heard this though. One is connected and one isn't.
Yeah.
Solitude replenishes and isolation diminishes.
Dr. Cloud's brilliant. One. Number two, it does take me into this space of this doesn't know immunity in regards to personalities.
Right.
And, I think about introverted people, where they get their energy, is not
solitude.
It's solitude, not to isolate, but it's to pull away, recharge. So, and this goes back to, you can be with a bunch of people, you can be an extrovert and still be suffering in isolation, suffering in loneliness, suffering in now. And that doesn't mean you're not talking loud and trying to make everybody laugh.
As a life of the party guy.
So the personalities don't.
It's lonely.
They don't make you. It's funny you said that. I mean, I think of and he had some real struggles. Robin Williams.
Oh yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want him at their party,
whatever,
or in their foursome on the golf course.
I want to be in a room with that guy.
And yet he suffered
Yeah.
He suffered deeply in the spaces of isolation and depression, and what he felt that was unable to be overcome. And so part of this exploration, as we explore more into isolation, is if we understand it more, if we can honor it some more, maybe we can be more encouraging, more helpful to what that is.
Shed some light on some things. Sure.
So a few months ago, I was on a team of guys that were working with a bunch of other younger guys in their stories. I mean, there was a bunch of us, like maybe 30 or 40 of us facilitating, and then, 120, 130 of the younger guys. And it was amazing to enter into those stories. It was an honor to do that and to hear. And I just remember here every one of the younger guys, and I'm talking about 30s and 40s. I'm 50, I'm getting closer to 60 than I am 50.
Yeah.
And so that was the honor to be there. But these younger guys just talking about how isolated they felt. And then when we started comparing notes within the facilitators, it was like across the board. It wasn't necessarily what they were walking into the weekend with, but every one of them was talking about having to deal with it, having to wrestle with it.
Common thread.
And experiencing that.
Yeah.
So that was recently, and observing that and listening to that. So, and then for me, that particular time that I was with this team of men from around the country, it was my third time. And I can remember this felt different, SJ. This time felt different. And when I compared it to the other two, the first time especially, like we were talking about earlier about in the part one about the transitions, the first time I was the freshman, I was the newbie, I was the youngest old guy there.
Right.
And they all knew each other. They were connected. It was like moving into a space that I'm not known. I'm not sure.
The new kid in school.
The new kid, and he's in 8th grade or 7th grade, or it's your sophomore year in high school, or goodness, maybe your 4th grade. I don't know that it has a limit, but to enter into that space, I can remember that first time feeling, and I'll tell you the feeling exactly. When I was growing up, it didn't matter where we moved. We always went back for holidays. My dad made sure all of us got back. Lots of cousins, both sides. My mom and dad were high school sweethearts. So when we would go home, wherever we were out living, and that when we would go home, you went to one grandparents and the cousins and uncles and aunts and all that, and then you went to the other one. So there was 25 people here and 30 people there, and that's how we kind of did these holidays. And there was, we ate at the kids' table. They literally had those folding legs that could
card tables.
Take your finger off.
Right. Oh, yeah.
If you got that thing anywhere close.
And like Brian Regan talks about, it sounds like a witch being boiled in oil when you open up the legs.
So
I'm not going to make the noise.
My point is those. There's the kids' table.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt my first and second year in being in this space.
So interesting.
I can describe it as feeling less, feeling inferior, feeling unsure,
disqualified, uncertain, or
unqualified or not qualified yet, And so then you got to kick into, okay, well, maybe I need to go make this happen.
Right. Who's the leader? I need to go get next to the alpha guy, dog, and I'm so self-conscious, man.
And I'm trying to say some of these words on purpose with emphasis, because I think this is what isolation often looks like.
Sure.
Even when you're with people, striving, trying to make a name or be known, be funny.
Right. Center of attention somehow.
Or just make a contribution. I don't even have to be the center, but I don't want to be on the other side of the chain link fence. The other boys are playing in there, and you're having to watch and just watch.
Right.
And you're not a part. And this third time, I think there was other new guys, when I showed up, I was in a reunion of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
They remembered me from past. I had stayed in touch with a couple of them during the year. It just was a remedy for that particular environment and what I was feeling.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And, it's interesting, couple of things in response. It sounds like the kids' table was a fond memory when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you're not a kid anymore.
Yeah. I feel
right?
like I'm
So you
sitting
don't want to
over there
feel
with
that
my
way
knees
again.
that are hitting the table,
right.
and
You're one
there's
of those
really not
kids.
too many other kids over there with me.
You're one
I'm
of those
just
kids
sitting over there.
He's kind of in between, like 15 or 16.
Yeah.
He's not quite old enough to be at the adults. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was interesting. And then the other thing I thought about was, as we try to explore more and become more oriented in the kingdom and really operate in a way that includes staying alert and oriented to what's going on around us, as the guy who now doesn't have to feel like I'm the new kid, I'm at the kids table, I'm looking in through the chain link fence, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a responsibility, but there is an opportunity for us as being alert and oriented to go after the guy that's on the other side of the fence and say, hey man, come play.
Yeah.
You got what it takes.
Yep.
And just being that operator in the kingdom.
Yep.
And watching out for hearts that are in that space and just on that edge of being wounded or affirmed.
Yeah.
And we've all been in those places where we feel pretty confident, we know we have a seat at the table. And then we've also been in those places, every one of us, where we're not sure if we're going to get picked.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I shared that with some people, that this time felt different in that circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they said.
Really?
You're kidding.
Yeah.
You felt that way. And so, again, I would say to anyone that's listening, this isn't a matter of if this happens to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it will. It does. There's just life moments. And I think the enemy is opportunistic and wants to whisper, you're invisible. We were just talking with a man who has suffered under the phrase,
oh yeah,
you're invisible. His dad didn't see him.
Yep.
And he's in his 60s now. And
this vow happened when he was like 8, I want to say.
And he couldn't.
He's talking about coloring books.
And there were reasons. His dad, he could walk in the room and was never acknowledged. Mm-hmm. He could walk out of the room and was never,
mm-hmm.
said bye to. I mean, there was reasons why he felt it as deeply as he did.
Sure.
But it's with him now in later stages of king and elder sage. Mm-hmm. And it's one of these things that's preventing him engaging, which is really the long-term. We have this long-term COVID thing that's out there.
Right.
Well, there's long-term effects of a lot of things.
Sure.
And long-term effect of wounding can be, he puts himself in a position where it's so volatile. Like if they don't ask me to come 8 feet over there and join them in their circle, see?
Yeah, we talked about in that context. I remember that weekend you and I had a conversation about the tendency to fall into the trap of self-perpetuation of these lies that the enemy has planted.
Yes,
like I don't have anything to offer. I'm not worthy of inclusion. They don't love me. See, you are invisible. And again, there is a tension there, right? Because we don't want to say, well, if it is to be, it's up to you. And you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and decide not to, engage in behavior that's self-perpetuating. At the same time.
Way easier said than done.
Yeah. And I think Jesus says time and time again, follow me. Not, yeah, okay, I'll drag you along kicking and screaming and all of that. I mean, he does want us to get up and walk with him, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
And so there is an intentionality, I think, that we would encourage ourselves and others to embrace.
Yeah.
especially when it comes to this behavior that leads to isolation.
And it may not be available for a while. If you're
Right.
suffering from it, if you're suffering from the isolation, the loneliness, the depression,
Mm-hmm.
the all that comes with that, and guilt, shame, and fear that seems to all congregate in the
Oh,
space
man.
of a time in your life, or even for some of us, it goes dormant and then finds itself like, boom, here you are.
Gets new legs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Mm-hmm.
not known, you're unsure, all of those things. And I think that as we close out this session, I think about the encouragement. How do we encourage people
Mm-hmm.
who, and encourage literally, you know, encourage, cur the heart, and to impart the bravery, to impart courage, to somehow come alongside someone. Empathy is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Sympathy is significant. Patience, and to know that people are dealing with this around you, even if you're not. And if you are, then, we're kind of talking to both people now here, right? The people that are under the influence of this, and those that maybe it's not as bad right now. And what does that look like? There's the dynamic. There's the possibility of getting encouragement, getting help. So here's the bravery of one person to move towards someone else when everything in them is screaming, do not do it. And then to be the person who opens the door, come in, who widens the circle and says, well, sit here. So to invite people on both sides of that chain link fence, where do you find the gate? The old gate that you can lift and pull and bring that person in. That's what I'm hopeful for as we do this series, is whichever one of those persons that I am, how do it's still going to take courage.
It's going to take courage,
bravery,
and it's going to be messy.
And it's going to be,
right?
It's going to be what relationships are,
Yeah.
challenging and yet rewarding,
Mm-hmm.
if we can push into some of those spaces. So
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about if the wounding happens in relationships, somebody doesn't handle your heart well, somebody who you're supposed to be able to trust at that time in your life proves themselves unsafe, untrustworthy, harmful, hurtful, you can go on down the list.
Yeah, and I'm going to do what you did to me earlier. I mean, it's not if.
Yeah, that's right.
Everyone has experienced that in some way, shape, or form.
So in the kingdom, I'm certain to where I will say, I'm pretty certain, but I'm certain in the kingdom, if it's the woundedness that causes that crap
Mm-hmm.
in our story and even in our current reality, that the tensions and the intensity of fallenness,
Mm-hmm.
of life outside the garden, of hurricanes, of pandemics, and then there's the personal stuff.
Right.
That's she left or he left, or I wasn't chosen, or I'm not good enough, or
Mm-hmm.
just unkindness, unfriendliness,
Mm-hmm.
Things that are being fed to us on our devices. All of that is a surmountable opponent when it comes to not just beating something. I don't want to make it like adversarial, but being aware of something, that the remedy for the person under and suffering and hurting is also, the equipment, I'll call it, for the person who isn't. You still have to see, and you have to see it.
Yeah.
You have to be able to move at it. You have to engage with it. When here comes the courageous person that says to the one in isolation, come with us. If you get that moment, then come with them.
Right.
There's
Right.
your line. And it feels like the collars the dogs wear. I mean,
Oh, the shock collar?
the shock collar.
Yeah.
It feels like you
Yeah.
have got to go across
Mm-hmm.
some underground fence
Mm-hmm.
and you got the shock collar on.
Mm-hmm. You've got to overcome some kind of pain, right? And because you're behind that fence because you've been hurt.
Yeah.
And so to overcome the pain of past interactions, past relationships, and enter back in, hugely courageous, hugely brave thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think, back to what it's not if it is to be, it's up to me. But I do have to get up off my mat. And at some point, I have to decide to risk again.
And that's the paradox. I want to go back to the sensitivity of that's how it's in relationships that fail that create such hurt and pain and isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And the remedy is so often relationship rescue, relationship intention.
Yep.
And that is where I think as we have a chance to be at our post in the kingdom, what kind of resources can we create? What kind of environments can we craft that hearts can feel safe and they can share and they can tell of their stories to and entrust those to people who won't tell them what to think or how to feel, but will just listen. I think good listening is going to be one of the greatest remedies to isolation, because isolation in almost every way ends up being muting.
Sure.
You're just not going to tell.
Takes away your voice.
You're not going to say, and you may be even talking, but you're not going to say anything of substance or of hurt or how you're really feeling or how you're really thinking, because
you're not going to say anything that might be risky to say.
Because you'll be judged.
Right.
And you'll find yourself back in the cell.
Right.
And so even coming up for a little sun and a little warmth feels so risky in that space. So I want to say it this way. I'm not looking forward to continuing to talk about this because
hard to talk about
because it's so challenging to get so much of it around us. But I think with the help of some friends on the team, and as we go into, what's a feminine heart? What does this look like for women? And what does this look like specifically for men? How does this look?
Yeah.
And then in marriage, this relationship that's supposed to be two people walking with God together, two people coming together, knowing and being known. Isolation in a marriage might be one of the most painful things that anyone ever has to go through.
No doubt.
And so, we want to just continue to kind of push into this. I feel like we're hitting, it's a narrow space and we're trying to squeeze through it with every sentence and every conversation and every piece. But the hope is that we can kind of get through this canyon and there's something good waiting if we can keep navigating through some of this tight spaces.
There's no doubt.
Isolation.
There's no doubt. We don't heal in isolation. We heal in community, right? And so to move in, I mean, I hope that the listeners feel like, we hear them, we are trying to listen to them well, and for them to feel included and seen, right? Even in their struggle. What I really hope is that this series finds someone who needs it.
Yeah.
That that the person who's like, at the end of their rope and kind of given up on things in terms of ever having hope of coming out of isolation.
Yeah.
I hope they do a search for the word and this pops up. I hope that, we can give some measure of hope.
The one that I think suffers greatly in our isolation, I really believe, is Jesus. And so somehow, some way, he is not approachable. The Father is not wanted, cannot trust, because circumstances are speaking very loudly.
Right.
And so this relationship that we're made for, intimacy and connectedness with God and others, isolation is definitely a fracture in those spaces.
Yeah.
And to have courage to even the thought of inviting somebody to trust again feels like it's an unkindness on my part. Like, well, you just need to be courageous, be brave, trust.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying.
Step aside across that line where you got gunned down, right? That is not what we're saying at all.
But when I'm hopeful that as we talk more about this, that the hotlines, the person that's actually extending that hand to be grabbed, will show up. There'll be somebody on the other end of the call. There'll be somebody on the other end of the resource. There'll be somebody to greet you in an environment that just says, "Man, we've been praying for you. It's so good to meet you." So I'm hopeful that we can explore more of that and see if we can bring some encouragement to those who are suffering in isolation, because we all do. So,
amen to that. If you want to reach out to us, send us an email, exploringmore@zoweh.org. And if you would, on your podcast platform of choice, leave us a rate, review, share episodes. I think about Michael as we're talking about the kingdom of darkness. We did a series on the two realms and two kingdoms. We've got a couple hundred episodes in the bank. So you can go back and tie it in with this message about isolation. Find other episodes where we go more in depth to the kingdoms of darkness spaces, that are relevant to isolation. So
intimacy, oneness,
check it out.
Intimacy, oneness, connectedness with God. One of the
absolutely.
4 pillars
That's a great
that
one.
we talk about. So so till next time, thank you for joining us on the Exploring More podcast. We'll see you again soon. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.